Alert: The Murder of Amber Hagerman, 1996. 9-year-old Amber Hagerman liked vanilla ice cream, skating, and Barbie dolls. She also loved to rake leaves into piles and jump in them. The third grader at Berry Elementary School in Arlington, Texas, was a good student, and writing was her favorite subject. She had helped teach her younger brother Ricky how to read. The girl with freckles on her face and a gap-toothed smile was independent. Amber had a favorite tree branch in her grandparents' yard that she would refuse to climb down from when she did not want to leave Grandma and Grandpa's house. Amber, Ricky, and their mother, Donna Whitson, left their apartment complex in East Arlington on January 13, 1996. It was warm, and they went to a park before heading to Burger King for a bite to eat. Then they walked door to door selling Girl Scout cookies to relatives and friends. Afterwards, they stopped in for a visit at the home of Amber's grandparents, Glenda and Jim Whitson. The close-knit neighborhood around the house on Highland Drive where Donna grew up had always been safe. That January day, Amber was wearing a light pink shirt with a handprint design on it. Her hair was tied with a black and white ribbon. She was singing America the Beautiful as she climbed onto her pink bicycle at about 3 p.m. and pedaled out of her grandparents' driveway with 5-year-old Ricky. They went about a block away, to the parking lot of an abandoned Winn-Dixie grocery store on East Abram Street. Children in the neighborhood liked to ride their bikes up and down the loading ramp on the store's east side. Ricky returned home alone a few minutes later. Neighbor Jimmy Kevill was in the backyard of his home on Ruth Street when he heard a girl scream. A full-sized black pickup truck pulled up to where Amber was riding her bike in the empty parking lot by herself, about 8 minutes after she had left home. A man jumped out, grabbed her under the arm, and pulled her off her bicycle. The bike fell over, and the man forced the kicking and screaming Amber into the cab of his truck and sped off. She had been abducted from a main thoroughfare in broad daylight, near a busy laundromat, and in full view of the yards of nearly a half-dozen neighbors. Kevill was the only witness. He called police. When Amber did not return home, her grandfather Jim Whitson became worried, and he went to look for her. He found her bike lying on its side, but there was no sign of Amber. Kevill told him that Amber had been abducted. Jim returned home and broke the news to his family. "Somebody's got her. Somebody's got Amber," another neighbor heard Amber's Aunt Sandra scream. Richard Hagerman, Amber's father, had been working on an old car when he went to the Whitsons to see his children. He was unaware that his daughter had been kidnapped. As he arrived, he saw police cars and thought that something had happened at a neighbor's house across the street. "Then I saw Donna crying in the driveway, and I knew it was something else," he later said in a newspaper interview. Police searched the area, but they only found Amber's bicycle. They notified the Federal Bureau of Investigation and other North Texas law enforcement agencies about the girl's disappearance. Local and national news reporters, photographers, and satellite trucks began gathering outside the family's home. Police and FBI agents conducted door-to-door searches and checked known sex offenders and the owners of black pickup trucks. Some civilians formed search parties to look for Amber, but there was no trace of her. As the search dragged on, Whitson and Hagerman stepped outside of the house and made a brief emotional plea, begging the kidnapper to release Amber unharmed. "Please don't hurt my baby, she's just an innocent child," a distraught Whitson said. Please bring her home safe. Please." They also pleaded with anyone who had information about the abduction to call police. For more than 4 days, the family held vigil as they waited for news. Nobody slept. Nobody ate, Whitson remembered. "Every time the phone rang, we jumped." For days later, a man was walking his dog at about 11 p.m. when he spotted the body of a young girl. She was lying face down in a creek bed behind the Forest Ridge apartment complex. She was nude, except for a sock on her right foot. In the wee hours of Thursday, January 18, the body was confirmed to be Amber's. The Tarrant County medical examiner ruled that she had been sexually assaulted and that she died after having her throat slashed. She had been found about 4 miles from the parking lot where she was abducted. Police officers and a chaplain arrived at the Whitson home to break the news to the family. Followed up on out-of-state leads. the Arlington Police Department created the Amber Hagerman Task Force to continue investigating the thousands of leads into her abduction and murder. 12 hand-picked investigators were assigned to the squad, headed by Sergeant Mark Simpson. They focused their efforts on the Forest Ridge Apartments, one of the largest complexes in Arlington. Every person who lived or worked there was interviewed. Detectives hosted a half-day intelligence meeting on the case in early April. It brought together about 100 local, state, and federal investigators from across Texas with expertise in child abductions and homicide. They reviewed the details of the case, looked for similarities between it and other offenses, and offered suggestions of new avenues of investigation for detectives to pursue. Please subscribe it if you enjoy it so far. In an effort to draw out her daughter's killer, Donna Whitson held a news conference on April 8, 1996, and read an open letter to him. "My little girl did nothing to you. Why did you terrify her?" she asked, according to newspapers. "Why did you take her clothing from her? Why did you touch her where you were not supposed to? Why did you hurt her, and most of all, why did you kill her?" Then she waited, hoping that he would send a reply to a post office box she had set up for that purpose. Week after week, letters of sympathy and support arrived, but no news from her daughter's killer. On May 14, 1996, Whitson released a second letter to the murderer. She was looking for answers. "I have never known an emotion could run deeper than love, and then you brought hatred to my life," she said in the second letter. "I feel a rage, a fury, that burns in my soul." She hoped to persuade the killer to write to her, by including in the letter, "You have committed the perfect crime. What fear could you have of capture? After all, there is no evidence, no witnesses." There was still no response. For their part, police investigators spent days combing the area where Amber was kidnapped. They distributed new reward posters that included more information on the characteristics of the killer. They also publicized a $75,000 reward for information leading to the murderer's arrest and conviction. There was no sketch of the suspect. All that police knew was that he looked Anglo or Hispanic and drove a black late-model pickup truck, possibly a Ford. No new clues turned up. Police investigated thousands of leads, which included contacting former kidnappers and sex offenders who were known to be living in the Arlington-Dallas-Fort Worth area, but what appeared to be promising leads went nowhere. In November 1996, investigators went to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to question a man who had been arrested in connection with raping and strangling 2 girls. Howard Stephen Alt lived in Arlington until 1994 and had family ties to the area, but he was able to provide an alibi for the day that Amber was abducted. He was not connected to her case. In April 1997, investigators traveled to Friendswood, Texas, outside Houston, to compare notes on the slaying of Laura Kate Smither. The 12-year-old disappeared on April 3, 1997, while going for a jog near her home. Her body was found about 10 miles northeast of Friendswood 17 days later, on April 20. She and Amber were both found in water, naked except for one sock. They were each white and had long brown hair and freckles. Amber's throat had been cut while Laura was decapitated, but police believed that it could have been caused by decomposition, animals, or water flow. However, investigators found no connection between the 2 murders. Police chased down about 6,000 leads, including more than a dozen false confessions. They spent more than $1.1 million in an effort to catch Amber's killer, but after a year and a half of searching, the number of leads had dwindled to 15. On June 23, 1997, Arlington police announced that they were disbanding the Amber Hagerman Task Force. There was no longer a need for a task force of 5 full-time members, although they would continue to investigate the case. In August 1999, registered sex offender Richard Lee Franks of Fort Worth, Texas, was charged with abducting and sexually assaulting Opal Jo Jennings, a 6-year-old girl from Saginaw, Texas, who was snatched from her grandmother's yard in March 1999. Arlington police met with Saginaw authorities, but they determined that there was no connection between the 2 cases. 10 years after Amber was murdered, police thought they might have yet another lead. In July 2007, police in Seattle arrested Tarapanat Han for the kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Zena Linick. She disappeared from a July 4th celebration, and her body was found July 12th in Washington state. Han was charged with first-degree kidnapping and first-degree rape and murder. Arlington police investigated a possible connection with Amber's killing, but found none. 3 months after Amber was abducted, the makeshift memorial that had sprung up in the vacant grocery store parking lot where she was kidnapped was removed. It included flowers, pink bows, handwritten notes, and teddy bears. 2 strangers had planted a 3-foot-tall tree nearby in her memory, but the outpouring of emotion that followed the murder led to initiatives to protect children. Within days of Amber's funeral, her parents announced plans to lobby for tougher laws for sex offenders. This initiative led to the creation of the group People Against Sex Offenders, which acted as a clearinghouse for information about the crime and lobbied for stronger laws to protect the public from molesters and rapists. At the end of March 1996, Democratic Congressman Martin Frost introduced the federal Amber Hagerman Child Protection Act to the U.S. House of Representatives. It increased the prison sentence of violent sex offenders and mandated an automatic life sentence in prison for anyone who was twice convicted of a sex offense against a child. It also created a nationwide sex offender registry. President Bill Clinton signed the Amber Hagerman Child Protection Act into law in October 1996. The same month that the act was signed into law, police and radio station executives in the Arlington area unveiled the Amber Plan, now known as an Amber Alert. Believed to be the first joint effort between media outlets and police departments, it calls for the emergency broadcast of a confirmed child abduction to alert the public and enlist their assistance in locating the child. Radio and television stations broadcast descriptions of abducted children and suspects, and information is also posted on electronic highway signs. In 2006, President George W. Bush signed a law expanding the Amber Alert program nationwide by giving states funding to start alert programs and authorizing the creation of guidelines as to when Amber Alerts should be issued. The law also allows federal judges to deny pretrial release for people charged with child rape or abduction, to order the lifetime supervision of sex offenders, to mandate life sentences for 2-time child sex offenders, and to toughen child pornography laws. In its first 10 years, the Amber Alert led to 400 children being successfully located and reunited with their families. More than 10 years after Amber Hagerman was yanked off her bicycle and stuffed into the cab of a black pickup truck, her abduction and murder remains unsolved. Her mother, Donna Whitson, now Donna Norris, gives speeches around the United States on child safety and the Amber Alert system. The case is still open, consigned to the Cold Case Unit. Detective Jim Ford was the lead investigator on the case and the only one left trying to find Amber's killer. According to an article in the Dallas Morning News, he kept a picture of her in his cubicle and would visit the site of the kidnapping and Amber's grave. Everybody went all out, trying to help, Ford said. There were lots of volunteers and various businesses put up reward money. We all really wanted to solve this one. We bow in front of you and thanks for watching. Please like it and subscribe it.